The law of the playground. The terrifying system of unwritten traditions, games, taunts and insults that rule the happiest days of every schoolchild in Britain. Joeys, gaylords, fannies, knobs, you get the idea.
Blaze. Sir. Reeves.
Here.
Middlemas.
Here.
Collins.
Present.
McGuinness.
Yes, sir.
Lee.
Yes, sir.
Mack.
Sir.
Dolan.
Present.
Mitchell.
Sir.
Montgomery.
Present.
Carr.
Sir.
Zane.
Here.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
I do not.
I do not who?
You done a poo?
You remember your first day in your class, your first day in your tutor group? So everyone's kind of, who's the tough kid? Who's going to be the tough kid? Who's going to be the funny kid? Who's going to be the weird kid no one talks to? Who stinks of piss?
Get on with your work.
Teachers.
There was a teacher called Doc Thornhill who shouldn't have been teaching. He was about 98. He'd quite often stand on his head. You know, like you'd be there all in silence doing your maths, and he'd be stood on his head at the end of the classroom.
We did have one teacher, and if you did anything like comb your hair or like look in a mirror, is this a fashion show? And you're like, no, it's just the basics of being a human being, really.
We had a teacher called Mr. Iain Lee who had a false arm, and he took so much flack. And his false arm, the hand slightly turned out, and we would hang all manner of things on it because he couldn't feel it, of course, because it was a prosthetic arm. And things like condoms would be hung on it, and maybe a tampon or something like that.
The one that I remember most was scratch and sniff. He would scratch his genitalia, and then there'd be a sort of 2 or 3 beats, you know, of real anticipation from the class who knew this. And he would give it a quick sniff, and then he'd turn to the board.
Mr. Brown was, you know, he was actually a nice guy, and his favourite thing was going, when he wanted quiet, he'd go, let's have the volume down. And he loved that.
Teachers don't think, don't mess around, it will go on your permanent record. And for your whole school life, you're thinking, man, I'm not going to get a job because I bunked off once and I called a teacher a tosser, and it's on my permanent record. There is no permanent record. It doesn't exist. It's a myth.
I do remember it being hysterical when you found out the first name of the teacher. So I remember when we found out Mr. Rogers, his name was Nigel, and just shouting it down the corridor, all right, Nige!
Physics teacher called Mr. He couldn't pronounce his R's or his L's. R's came out as a L, and L's came out as a R. And he turned round with a piece of chalk and he wrote, white light and the electromagnetic spectrum. And then turned around and went, white light and the electromagnetic spectrum. He was a lovely man, but what a first lesson. And I respected him from that day forward because he nailed his colours to the fence there, didn't he?
I think I was told about autumn every year from the ages of 4 to the age of about 11. You kind of think, you only know about autumn, don't you? You don't know all the wisdom of the world. You know there's evergreen trees and there's deciduous trees, and that's it. That's the sum of your knowledge. You told me about this years ago. I've got it. I'm fed up with drawing different leaves. I won't need this. Leave me alone. And then you sort of get, I get this. This school thing, it's not about education primarily. It's about somewhere to stick us all. Because you can't have us just running around the place. If it was just, OK, quickly, read, write, autumn, now come back and do your GCSEs, that wouldn't work for society.
School disco.
School disco was a miserable, horrible experience where tall, gangly boys like me were made to realise just how unattractive and insignificant they were to girls.
The main thing of school disco was in your diary, in your journal, you would count down to the school disco. So I'd have 14 days to the school disco, 13 days to the school disco, 12 days to the school disco. And it would just be a countdown, what you're going to wear, who you're going to dance with, who you're going to talk to. And then usually it was a bit of a disappointment. And then the entry of the journal the next day was, school disco was rubbish. It was really crap. Lewis Cross danced with Gina all night.
Now we're right together.
everyone turned up in waistcoats. Do you remember when Jason Donovan and Kylie Minogue, that's especially for you, everyone bought a waistcoat. Everyone was in a waistcoat, even the poor kids. I don't know where they got that waistcoat from, but they were wearing it.
I can remember getting ready hours before I needed to. A little bit girly, but I did. And inexplicably, I still don't understand why I did it, I wore a waistcoat. A fat kid wearing a waistcoat. I was definitely going to pull.
I wanna show you my heart is oh so true, and all the love I have is especially for...
I remember once they were playing Duran, because I was a massive Duran Duran fan, and they played Girls on Film, and all the girls just started screaming. Like as if Duran Duran, when the room, no, they're just playing the record. Shut up, shut up. They turned all the lights on at that point and said, right, everyone calm down, or you're not getting any more pop.
If there was like specific moves, like for Rick Astley, it was never going to give you up, so that, and never going to let you down, never going to play around and hurt you, never going to make you cry, never going to say a lie. Can't remember the rest.
I remember dancing with the boy, like, you know, you dance like this. Well, you dance with your arm on their shoulder and they put their hand and you sort of go like this. And everyone else was snogging and he was kind of pulling me towards him and I was just, like, digging my elbows in his arms so he couldn't get any closer because I didn't really fancy him and his breath smelled.
I never got a dance at the school disco. I never got, even the last dance where anyone can get a dance, I never got a dance.
Bring that note up to the front.
Lying.
Given any opportunity, I think most kids, especially boys, lie. You lie about success with girls. Usually lie about what members of your family do. The classic one is that your dad's in SAS.
Basically, kids lied constantly. There's one guy at our school who said that he was the German BMX champion and that he owned a meat factory.
Tom was the best. Tom was brilliant. He was the king of lies. For one, he wrote the code for Batman on the Spectrum. It's pretty good. He found a bale of hash this big in the woods and just keeping it. He's not going to do anything, not going to smoke or anything, we just can keep it. And while he was in the woods, he found a little hatch which opened up into an underground complex, and he found the weapons room, which was just all manner of weaponry across the walls, including the minigun from Predator.
I once convinced him that on Record Breakers the previous night, I'd seen Jeff Capes throw a fox around the world, and he believed me.
There was a great story a friend of mine bandied about, is that she had spent the night with Prince. He gave her some clothes. He said she could have any clothes she wanted, presumably from his wardrobe. And he showed her a really good time, and then he said, I'm really sorry, I've got a lot of commitments, so we won't be able to, you know, carry this on, but I've had the time of my life. We all believed it.
There was a chap who did a paper round, and he used to come in at lunchtime. There used to be this room, one of the rooms upstairs, and he'd hand out fags, because he'd nick these cartons of 200 fags. So you'd have a selection of Rothmans and B&H, and he was kind of quite popular. But then it was discovered that he was actually buying them to sort of be popular, give them out.
I once pretended to my whole class that Harrison Ford was my father until a friend of mine pointed out that couldn't possibly be true. Nick Nolte Jr. I always hated him.
Chinny Recon? Jimmy Hill?
A Chinny Recon, or a Jiminy, as we used to call it in school, is if you thought your mate was lying or exaggerating the truth, what you do is, you know, you stroke your chin and sort of nod like this to indicate he was full of BS.
There were variations on the Chinny Recon, and they all involved some sort of appendage to the chin. So I think there was a sort of Jimmy Hill type one, a Tutankhamun, which was like that, and Itchy Beard was another one.
You can actually still do it in real life in quite a sort of, oh, that's interesting, actually, you know, just subtly kind of, oh, you invented the Mini, I see, yeah, it's a good car.
I do remember Tutankhamun, that was quite a thing. Boys used to say it and it would be Tutankhamun!
I went to an Egyptian school. Went down like a sack of piss, that. I was the only English kid there.
And to give it extra effect, you repeat back to him what you said. So you'd be like, oh, yeah, on Saturday you went to see West Ham and you got Frank McAvenny's phone number. Oh, yeah. Oh, what's that? You got a new car? Oh, yeah. Oh, what's that? You wasn't at school last week because your mum died of cancer. Oh. Sorry.
I think we should be used more in polite society, you know, around a dinner party. Oh, things are going well for you, are they, at the office? Yeah. Someone was telling me that, yes. That's the word is, your career's going well.
I think chinny record might have been a southern thing. We called it Belm for some reason in the northwest. Like Belm, right? Which I don't know what it called. I think Belm was actually the Dutch version of Jimmy Hill.
We didn't do chinny record. We sort of went bah, like that when we were at primary school. But then by the time we turned 12, we were pretty forward about calling each other liars.
Get out!
Farts.
Remember with farting, there was he who smelt it dealt it, and he who said the rhyme did the crime. And that's the basic. That's your bluff and your double bluff. So essentially, anyone commenting on a fart at all might be responsible. But I think the thing with farts is that farting's fine. You know, it happens. Everyone has to fart. Tiny, microscopic quantities of airborne shit. You're not going to get ill by inhaling it. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. And in general, society needs to just get a grip about farting. We should be allowed to fart whenever and however we feel is necessary.
There was this teacher once, somebody farted, and he went berserk, he said, who was it? Who did that terrible thing?
Who tells us at the age of 4, yeah, no, if you're the one that did the thing that everyone does on this occasion, then that's really humiliating for you. Why? Why can't you put your hand up and say, yep, it was me this time, but we've all had egg for lunch, and we'll all be doing it. And if you're not, your digestion's not working properly.
If somebody farted, as soon as you smelt it, you had to put your hand on your chin, sometimes 2 hands. Don't know why it was one hand, 2 hands. The last one to do it would be the one who dealt it, obviously. But, of course, the first one who did it was the one who farted, because they knew it was coming, so you'd wait. How long? Oh, one person's done it. I'll do it now. And then you'd go, and find your victim, the one who hadn't smelt it, who was down the other end of the room, who hadn't put their hand to their chin. Strange.
If someone has done a smelly fart, you're legitimately allowed to go, oh, Jesus Christ! You can say that even in an exam. Jesus Christ! Quiet, please. But, miss, he's farted and it stinks of shit. You could say that. And 9 times out of 10, not get into trouble.
The farts that I was most interested in at school were lady farts, and they were the farts that girls did when they were laughing.
We discovered that our Fanny could fart, and we had hours of enjoyment with that. We discovered it by accident one day, sat in the cloakrooms with our jumpers over our knees, and we just heard the weirdest fart. And I know who it was. I shan't say her surname, but it was Sophie. She was like, oh my God, that fart just came from my Fanny. And we were like, oh my God, how did you do that? And we spent hours trying to Fanny fart.
What's the next letter after H in the alphabet? I. What colour is the sky? Blue. What's the opposite of on? Off. You blew off!
Pain. A spam is a slap, preferably with this part of your palm, to the forehead.
Spam is when you go like that on your head. Spam, like this, that would come from nowhere.
And I think that's why a lot of these kids had the wedge haircuts, so not to expose their foreheads. But for me, it was open season.
Jinx was when you said the same thing at the same time with someone else. And whoever shouted jinx the first, that had the right to make sure the other boy was silent. And if he then spoke, he'd get punched by the boy who shouted jinx.
There was the wedgie, which was you just grab someone by the rim of their pants and hoik it up. Or there's the super wedgie, the uber wedgie, where 2 of you would grab like a really weak, frail child, either side, and try and get his pants up to his shoulders, or even over his head. Man, that was brilliant if you could do that.
The only way out of jinx was if someone else, unprompted, says the full name of the boy who was under the jinx, which might take a while, unless, of course, you're being baptised.
I was in the 3rd year and the 1st years, and we used to basically run at each other and smash hell out of each other. You run into someone, and there was no point to it other than that, but I hit this one kid. He was in it, he was running towards me, so I rammed into him, and he had bad asthma, and he was on the floor going, and he nearly dead when I got detention and lines and everything. But it turned out his brother was the hardest kid in town, and he was waiting for me outside the gates. And I was so sick with worry that this, because everyone was winding me up saying, oh, well, he's going to bite your ear off. You are aware of that. You have to spend the rest of your life like that. And he might cut your nose off as well. So I was getting worse and worse every day. So I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to feign illness for a week. By that time, it had gone. So after a week, I thought it was safe to go back, and I got away with it.
What is this, a mother's meeting?
Gay?
The reason you went to school in the morning at 9 o'clock till 3:30, there was one reason and one reason only. The mission for the day was not to be called gay.
Gay was a term of abuse that would be applied to everything. You could have gay hair, gay ears, gay nose, gay face, a gay walk.
You could have a gay bag, gay coat, gay shoes, a gay pencil, a gay pen.
If you went into a library, you were gay. If you didn't like sport, you were gay. If you hung around the girls skipping, you were gay. If you came in makeup, you were gay. No.
If you didn't agree with something someone had said, gay. Did you see that movie? No, I haven't seen it. Gay. What did you have for tea last night? Oh, I had chips. Gay. Were they gay chips? Were they? Bet they were, because you're gay. So even if you eat chips that are just regular chips, they're gay chips because you ate them.
Any male teacher that's in any way odd is gay. Being over 40, being single, having a moustache, these are all grounds for big-time homosexuality.
We used to call, if anyone suspected of being gay, they would be called a Joey. And when we were about 14 and started to involve ourselves with beer, I remember being in a classroom once and some kid said, "Should we go over the fields tonight and drink a can of beer?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're in, we'll go and we'll do that." And this one kid said, "No, actually, I prefer wine." Joey!
If you, as much as your leg touched another lad's leg, you'd be classed as a bummer. Paddy's a bummer. He just tried bumming me at showers. Stood on his foot, but that's bumming someone.
A group of boys in a room together, they will pretend to bum each other. They will pretend to bum each other. They will, come on, let's bum rape him. Come on, let's have some bumming. I'm going to bum you, or I'm going to bum you off. Come on, let's bum rape. You would do that, but that wasn't gay. That was very, very heterosexual. But if you're a bit spazzy, a bit clumsy, a bit of an idiot, then that's gay.
If it's so funny, why not share it with the whole class?
Joey Deacon.
The first time they wheeled Joey Deacon onto Blue Peter and he tried to speak. To a 10-year-old boy, I imagine that was the equivalent of when our parents saw for the first time Bill Haley sing Rock Around the Clock. 10-year-old kids just went fucking crazy.
Mr. Joey Deacon, who is nearly 60 years old and confined to a wheelchair. And it all started when one day, as a bit of a joke really, one of the nurses said, "You know what, Joey? You ought to write a book about your life." And that's exactly what Joey did. With the help of Ernie and Tom and Michael, their two great friends who were also in their ward. First of all, Ernie would translate Joey's grunts, and very slowly, Michael would write the words down.
And if we lived in a more civilized, humanitarian society, what a 10-year-old boy would do when he saw Joey Deacon, he'd say, "That man is a timely reminder never to take for granted all of life's precious gifts." What we actually did was, every 10-year-old boy around the country, when they saw Joey Deacon, all went,
He had a terrible life and he had these terrible impediments, and he turned to his mate Ernie Roberts one Saturday afternoon in 1970 and said, "I'm going to write my story." He didn't say that. It was unintelligible, to be honest. He didn't make any sense. But Ernie Roberts was brilliant. He was like C-3PO from Star Wars. You know, C-3PO can understand any language in the world, apart from Welsh. Because Joey Deacon could kind of, I'm not going to do it. Joey Deacon would try and talk gobbledygook. Ernie would go, "I know what that is. Michael, get your typewriter." They had another bloke, Michael would type it. So Joey would talk, Ernie would translate, Michael would type, and then Tom would make tea.
It's a good job that he died, because if he'd been alive today, he'd have been presenting Celebrity Robot Wars, maybe fighting Stephen Hawking.
I don't think Tom needed to be there, and I think Joey Deacon knew this. There was one too many involved. Joe is talking, Ernie Roberts is translating, Michael's typing. There's no need for Tom. Tom's superfluous. Tom's just a ligger. I always thought Tom was a ligger. He has no purpose being there, Tom. He's just jumping on the bandwagon. He wants a credit. In Joey Deacon, he didn't even know Joey Deacon. Joey Deacon's trying to say, who's this fucking bloke? Who's this bloke?
If you've finished your work, fold your arms and be quiet.
Nicknames.
No, I didn't have a nickname at school. I was quite lucky because my name's Lee, so quite a short name, so obviously I didn't get any nicknames in the playground apart from Lee stinks away, and that never bothered me. They're not laughing now, are they? They're over 60 quid, these shoes.
I didn't have very good nicknames just because I was tall, so I was lanky. Daddy long legs was the one. I used to hate that. Lanky streak of piss.
Spindle, because I was skinny with no tits. This is when I was at a mixed school. Crazy Legs Crane. Montgomery, without the T, very good. And they would call me Ethiopian because I was skinny.
Putting a Y on the end of somebody's surname was generally how you created a nickname for somebody. So horny it had to be. Because there's an E on the end of horn, when we started doing French, it did turn into Hornet, which was a bit gay, so that petered out. But it couldn't have been anything else. There was no other nickname for me, apart from Matt the Twat.
It was always either ended in Y or S-T-E-R, so it was Paddy, Paddo, or Padster. And that was until they came round to your house. If your mate's knocks on your door and your mum answered and they said, is Paddy in? She'd go, no, but Patrick is. So full names at home, back at school, Paddy, Padster, Paddo, Pistains.
Some people would assign themselves nicknames, wouldn't they? That was always a bit weird. Crazy horse or whatever. Why? I'm mental, me. No, you're not.
I had quite big feet at school. They're in proportion now, but they were bigger then. So a friend of mine says, look at the size of your feet, we'll call you Chopper. And I thought, it suggests all sorts of things. So I'll live with that. And if anyone asks, I'm not going to say it is the size of your feet.
Why do you have to put chairs on the tables anyway? What is the purpose of that? Why does the chair have to go on the table? You don't put, when you go to bed, you don't put your lazy boy on top of your dining table. What is the point of putting a chair on the table?
Jade Goody is the presenting talent on the Friday Night Project tonight, plus the beats from Razorlight.
The law of the playground. The terrifying system of unwritten traditions, games, taunts, and insults that rule the happiest days of every schoolchild in Britain. Joeys, Gaylords, Fannies, Knobs, you get the idea.
Boyle.
Here.
Reeves.
Here.
Darby.
Here, sir.
Mac.
Sir.
Godleman.
Sir.
Thomas.
Present, sir.
Lee.
Yes, sir.
Dolan.
Present.
McGuinness. Mitchell.
Sir.
Middlemiss.
Here.
Carr.
Sir.
Are you a gay or a farmer? A farmer? Here's 2 acres for you. Ah!
We had this teacher who was called Mr. Serious and was like really not strong enough to be teaching. And what they used to do is like we'd sit there and when he'd turn around to write on the board, everyone would like inch their desk forward. And he was obviously too afraid to say anything. But in the end, like one day, he ended up just like totally crushed against the blackboard with all these kids sitting round him like something out of the Birds. And he had like a complete nervous breakdown eventually. And he got a job as a bus driver, but his bus route came right by the school. And everyone used to fire out at lunchtime and hurl abuse at him. It was brilliant.
Right, if nobody owns up, you are all staying behind for detention.
Cheating.
Me and Clay used to sit opposite each other and we had a little system. This was A, this was B, this was C, and this was D. But the problem was you would go, "Oi, what's number 8?" Like that. We didn't really have a system for that bit, but we did have a system for the answers.
But there's probably people now who are High Court judges on the back of something that was written on a soft mint wrapper.
Even your best mate, if they knew the answer to something, you would never, ever get the answer off them. And if they wrote it, they'd do that. They'd cover it up like that with their arm, because that blocks everything.
But your skirt was navy, so you could write your answers on that and they wouldn't show up at a distance. Of course, you had your answers on a rubber. Of course, there was the old let's buy chewing gum. Let's put the answers on the inside of the actual silver foil, fold them up neatly and put them back in because you're allowed chewing gum in a test situation.
In English, we had to write a short story. And I remember copying verbatim a story from about 1900 because I thought it was a book of short stories I'm never going to know. So I copied this short story out and just handed it in. The opening line was just some romantic scene about she came over the hill, her hair flowing in the wind. And he's going, are you sure that you did this? Yes. I'm on the outside, I'm reserved and young, but on the inside I'm a poet just waiting to get out.
During the oral, the Spanish teacher was really bad, and he knew he was really bad, and he knew he was in for a bad run of results. So whilst doing the oral, he would mouth the answer to you very clearly, and you'd be going, "Oui, ay, I'll play." So I don't know what must happen when this tape went back to the exam centre and they played it, and there were a load of kids. "El playa ora."
When I did a French exam, I'd written all around the outside of the desk, I'd written what I presumed might be the answers. So I'd be going like that to have a look, and then he eventually came and lifted the desk up and said, "Voila." And I said, "Look, it rubs off." And I was trying to rub it off. He said, "Show me that again." I went like that, and he slammed it down on my finger.
Strangers.
The term paedophile or pederast or anything like that didn't seem to exist, and it was all about strangers, and it was this kind of sort of quite a safe euphemism.
Charlie and I were in the park. Then this man came up and said, "Would I like to see some puppies?" And I said yes.
You were told to look out for strangers trying to get in the back of a van with the offer of going to check out some puppies or have some sweets, little boys. And that was it. If they weren't saying that, you could go anywhere with somebody. But if they said those catchphrases, puppies or sweets, don't go anywhere near them.
Well, one girl, Helen, her mum had given her a code to say. Like, because a man had said, "Oh, my mum told me to pick you up from school." And she went, "What's the code?" And he went, and drove off. So everyone was like, "Oh my God, I want to get a code." I said, "Mum, I need a code." And she wouldn't give me a code.
Charlie's reminded me, my mum says I shouldn't go off with people I don't know.
All strangers' cars had central locking. In fact, I think central locking was invented by a pioneering paedophile.
You'd really have it on your mind when you got to the gate, like, I must make sure it's my dad in the driving seat and not someone I've never met before.
There was all this stuff, wasn't there, about you shouldn't speak to strangers and strangers will want to have sex with you. And then you leave school and you spend the next 20 years trying to have sex with strangers.
We went and told Mummy, and she said we'd been very good. I got an apple and Charlie got something he likes.
I must say, it would have been very difficult if the guy had pulled up and said, "I've got an Atari 2600 at home. Would you like to get in the car?" Because then you're thinking, that is a proper dilemma, because I've only got an Amstrad CPC 464. You know, and that's rubbish.
Am I boring you, Atkinson?
Science.
They give you goggles, and that I immediately smelt a rat, because they said, give you goggles so that something hot and burning and made of chemicals can't go in your eye. Well, I applaud that aim. Nevertheless, it did occur to me that therefore something hot and chemically and burning could go there, or burn through my jumper there.
Well, I used to like anything that would blow up. We used to get the gas taps, and when the teacher returned, you'd get a lighter or a match and turn the gas taps on, and there'd be like a flame like that, and then she'd turn around and you'd turn it off again.
I still can't believe they let us near Bunsen burners. And I remember something that me and my mates used to do is we would go around when the teacher wasn't there and squirt posher kids' pencil cases with ethanol and then just burn them. You know, they're just like junior arsonists. That's all that went on. It was fun to burn things. And the gas taps and the Bunsen burner, but using them as like portable flamethrowers, stuff like that. We were just thugs.
Another teacher at our school, Mr. Carr, actually blew us up. He was doing a hydrogen experiment, and he just blew the whole classroom up, and I mean kids hospitalled a lot, very, very, deadly serious. I hope he's still teaching. Makes lessons a bit more interesting, I suppose, and you get time off school.
Who was the lab assistant? What was that all about? Because you had the science teachers, and then you had this sort of eagle-like figure who was the lab assistant, and you were never allowed to speak to them or make eye contact with them. They were just there. And while your science teachers would be called, you know, Mr. Jarvis and Mr. Jones, the lab technician would just be called Alan.
There was a teacher called Mr. Dixon. He was a great teacher. He was an ex-World War II fighter pilot with a handlebar moustache. He had this long hair coming out at the end of his nose, and in the science lesson, when we were doing this thing where you hold your nose and close your eyes and you taste like apples and carrots and things, and you can't taste them. So he demonstrated this by doing that, closing his eyes and eating a bit of apple, and I snipped off the hair. And when he opened his eyes, he said, or whatever, he said, who snipped my prong? And all the kids went, him.
Right, who threw that?
Teacher torture.
The best prank ever played in a teacher in my class, and I reckon maybe the best prank ever played in a teacher, was a guy in the class. He was the class joker. He waited till the teacher went out of the class. He opened the window, which was 2 floors up, ran down the stairs and laid on the floor like he'd fallen out of the window.
Play game called Ball Bag and Fanny Flaps, which is the winner is the one who shouts it the loudest. So we'd be in an English lesson, ball bag, ball bag, ball bag. Then you get one kid who go, ball bag, like that, get out, like that. And he would be the winner as we all leave and he's having an hour detention.
She was called Miss Danskin, and we came up with a top 10 of like songs that could incorporate her name. Danskin in the street, Let's Danskin, the whole thing. And we'd sit in the back of the class and sing them. And yeah, she didn't come back.
The class used to, I think it was almost 1 period out of 3, pretend they could smell gas and pretend there was a leak, and at which point he was a fire officer for the whole school. He would get extremely self-important and go, OK, all right, everyone, keep calm. He'd make everyone leave, go outside, hang around, and then go around all of the gas taps, testing them to see if there's a leak. And then sort of after 15 minutes would come out and say, well, thank you very much for raising that alarm. It's very important. You did the right thing. I can't find a leak at the moment. I honestly think it's okay. It must have been a bit of a gas that had escaped at the previous lesson. We can go on and carry on with chemistry, but well done, everyone, for pointing that out. And he never smelt a rat. He didn't smell gas or a rat.
The paranormal.
There was a bucket that appeared in the boys' toilets from nowhere, and everyone said that was a ghost. And looking back, it probably was the caretaker.
We did have a phase where we were really quite heavily into Ouija boards, and we'd cut out the letters and lay them all out on the table. And if we didn't have a glass, we'd use a coin and ask it all manner of really deep, quite significant questions, like, is Tara going to pack in Gary?
So you'd think if we were actually doing it, the answers would be yes when we say, will Mark ever ask me out on a date? It would always be no. Will I marry Mark? No. So that's why I kind of think maybe it was real.
Some boarders had been messing around with a Ouija board. And I remember one teacher saying very seriously to a class when they'd heard about this, that you shouldn't do that. Because a few years ago, some boys did that, and they got very, very frightened. But you don't just run away from it. Either it's bollocks and you can mess around with it as long as you like, and if you get scared, then you're an idiot, or it's true, in which case it should be analysed and studied under scientific conditions. Stupid little boys messing with things they don't understand. What? Stupid, curious little boys messing with things you believe in, you idiot.
Revolved around Maria, who was the lightest girl in our class. We'd have 2 fingers on her, right, each of us. And so we do, in the house of consequences, 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 in the house of consequences, 1, 2, 3. On the sound of 3, you may rise, 1, 2, 3. And then lift her up with our fingers. And like lifting her up. Oh, she's levitating! What? She's levitating! Maria's levitating, everybody!
The school was built in like 1970, and why would there be the ghost of a Victorian child wandering around here when it was just, you know, a field before?
There would always be that room and they'd say, you'd come in and they'd say, oh, what did you do this week? And we did a Ouija board. And what happened? Oh, we got through to Lenny. Who's Lenny? I don't know, but he's going to get us all. You know, I'm going to die next Wednesday and we're all going to die. Everyone in the room is going to die. None of them did die. One did. So maybe there was some truth.
Are you a Benny tied to a tree? No. Benny on the loose, Benny on the loose.
Poor kids.
Of course, there's no stigmas at school, is there? Can you queue up for your free dinner and you will be given something that... Because it's not money. We won't give you money to go and spend on the thing, obviously. That would be ridiculous. We'll give you a green voucher, right? And also, can you wear this hat that says, I'm a poor kid, with a big arrow? It's got flashing lights, but, you know, just so people know.
I mean, poor old Dane and his mum, I don't know what was going on. She just used to give him a bag of sugar, Tate and Lyle, and he used to go like that and just eat, and his like teeth were just basically stumps. They looked like toe separators, you know, like that. They were just vile.
It's mad, isn't it? Because, you know, kid was quite poor, and his family, probably both parents unemployed, generally one of the parents was dead, you would beat the shit out of them, and, you know, and tease them, and be merciless to them.
Mind you, his mum and dad were well rough. Nicholas had been round his house for dinner, and the dad had said to his mum, if you don't shut up, I'll kick you in the flaps. And so, looking back, I think it was a dysfunctional family.
They wouldn't have labels. They wouldn't be able to have labels, so they'd have like fake labels. So Nike would be Nick, Adidas would be Adidas. It was all close, but no cigar with the labels.
There was this girl, I'm not going to say her name, but and she was always, you know, she always looked, you know, she just didn't look good, and she needed a wash, and she always, her hair was mad, and it looked like she had lice, and so of course we sat her down and we did all her hair, not with our brush, like we used Beverly Well's brush. Beverly Well went absolutely nuts when she found out we'd used her brush. She threw it away. She threw the brush.
We had this rabbit called Snowy, and all the kids used to love this rabbit, man, big floppy ears, white rabbit. And one Easter holiday, this girl called Janine, she took Snowy home. And when we all came back from holiday, it was announced in assembly that Snowy had died. Now, it was well known that Janine and all her family were on the welfare. Now, I'm not saying that Janine's family ate the rabbit. All I am saying is, it stands to reason, you don't let the poor kid take the rabbit home. And when we all came back from holiday, it was announced in assembly that Snowy had died. Now, it was well known that Janine and all her family were on the welfare. Now, I'm not saying that Janine's family ate the rabbit. All I am saying is, it stands to reason, you don't let the poor kid take the rabbit home. Why put temptation in their way?
Good afternoon. Glad you saw fit to join us.
Bunking off.
You know, we'd sort of get really excited about bunking off. It'd be like kind of creating this plan, this great escape. So that we'd all get to bunk off and it'd be brilliant. And we'd be like, go and hang out down by the river, because that's the cool place to go. So we'd all get down to the river and then just sort of sit there and go, right, have a fag. And then nobody had any money. We'd have about 20p between us. And in those days, you could go as far as you wanted on a bus for 10p. So we'd get the 285 to Heathrow Airport because we could, then get the bus back.
The one day we decided, right, we're going to do it. It was PE, because we all hated PE. We decided to all bunk off en masse. And it was literally the stupidest idea ever, because every single one of us just left school Friday lunchtime on the same day. And even the stupidest teacher's going to go, hang on, I don't need to be some sort of educational Columbo to realise they've all gone because they're all mates. And we all got letters home. But I was the only one who intercepted the letter, wrote a word processed reply, signed it in my mum's signature, sent it back to school, never heard anything.
I mean, I had such a conscience that guided me in school that the thought of mooching, as we called it, and playing truant was just like, something I just couldn't do. And I remember trying to do it once, lasting about 5 minutes. I think I barely got out the school gates before I turned back, went in and apologised for being late, and never thought about mooching again.
We called it dogging. in Scotland. People were dogging school, and if they dogged for long enough, they get a dogger's card, which was a card that you had to get your teacher to sign at the end of every lesson, as opposed to the register that you hadn't been appearing on for 2 weeks.
So we used to sometimes skive off and go and play crown green bowls, which the old man's sport really, but it was good fun. That all I seem to remember we did a can lying on our backs quite a lot.
John's Not Mad.
John's Not Mad was a QED documentary about a boy with Tourette's syndrome, and everyone the next day was copying John, and there were some real classic moments in the documentary. For some reason they took this John to the quietest places going. They took him to a library.
The whispering silence of the local library is an impossible challenge.
Fuck off! And there was a classic scene where he's in a supermarket and his mum asks him, John, what kind of biscuits do you want? And he says, the C word, and it isn't custard cream.
And obviously his condition is extremely difficult for him and his family, but obviously it's hilarious. His illness is doing or saying the very thing you shouldn't do or say in any given circumstance. But the bit of his brain that tells him not to is also the bit of his brain that's completely in charge and makes him do it.
Fuck off. After the documentary was shown in the playground, it was basically a license to swear for all kids, man. And you've never seen so many undiagnosed cases of Tourette's syndrome in your life. You'd be running around the playground saying, fuck, shit, bollocks. And the teacher saying, you know, you got detention. Miss, I can't fucking help it. I've got Tourette's. Give me a fucking break. Come on, you fucking bitch. I'm a sick man.
For me, the best bits were not the swear words, but just the abuse words. So there's a fantastic moment when he's getting a bit of help. He's in sort of social care, and they're trying to stimulate him by sending him to a flower arranging class. And he's there in this greenhouse with lots of pots, and he's got flowers and plants and shrubs and all the rest of it. And it's all going really well, and he hasn't sworn for a while, and there's this woman helping him. And it's great, and she helps him, she hands him a bit of soil, and he just says, fucking prostitute. And it was actually the word prostitute that really broke me up, because it showed a lot of detail. It's a very focused insult, you know, because sort of swearing and saying fuck off and you're a bastard is one thing, but these little vignettes of calling this woman a prostitute, who was a social worker, a very worthy woman in her 50s, it was the most perfect moment.
If you require extra paper, raise your hand.
Knobs.
I haven't done one of these for ages, so I'm a little bit rusty. You'd start with the balls, and then you'd have it like that, a bit like a butternut squash.
Now, the indentation at the top of the helmet is something a lot of people neglect to remember, but it's an important detail, and it shows you've got experience.
And then you've got the hair to show it was of legal age. The last thing you want to do is draw a young boy's penis. That would be wrong.
Then if you want, you'd have a bit of jizz coming out there.
Veins are something, a very unsung hero of the penis drawing is a couple of veins. Couple of veins.
I think that's medically called a Jap's eye. I think that's the accepted term. I don't think it's offensive. I think doctors actually use that.
Or if you were nasty, then you'd have someone's mum's mouth and her nose.
See, my classic speed double was always just about speed. It wasn't art, it wasn't beauty, it was always about speed, because that's where the fun was. It wasn't drawing. Some lads would take ages colouring them in during lessons, putting hair on them and stuff like that. No, mine was just about getting that on the page as quickly as possible. And, I mean, I'm a bit rusty now, so it'll probably be a couple of seconds, but it used to be really, really quick. And even now, I could probably just go, that's a speed dobber. Okay? If I had an extra bit of time, maybe that. But that's a speed dobber. Again, you know, it's ruined someone's book, and it's effective. Job done, to be honest.
Here's what I'd do. The two pendulous balls there, and perhaps a couple of hairs on a fly hovering around there and there, perhaps down there, and then this, it would go up like this, so like that, so it'd look a bit like that. Well, I didn't want to do the standard ones, that, innit? But that's boring, so forget that, and that's it.
That's not a cue to start chatting.
Upside-down calculators.
I think everyone did this at school. Someone discovered a brilliant invention. You could actually write rude words on a calculator, and you could look at them upside down and spell a rude word. I think everyone knows this one. That's boob. Or, plural, I've done that wrong. That's spoobs.
There you go. B-O-O-B-I-E-S, boobies. You can also have knob and shell oil.
I'm sure I can do shit. Hang on. It'll be worth it. Well, it's shill, but it's sort of shitty, isn't it? It's almost shit on there.
Yeah, another one was SO, which was 0.553. Yeah, a bit of free advertising for SO there. Look at that.
I can do motherfucker, but it requires sin, tan, and loci. And this calculator hasn't got it. So instead, shh, be quiet.
What did it take to be in the cool gang? I think you have to do something that's a bit scandalous, or have a really short set, or kiss a boy, or get fingered. If you've been fingered, then you're definitely part of the cool gang. It's like, she's been fingered. Yeah, let's hang out with her. She's cool.
Justin Hawkins steps out of the darkness and into the spotlight on the front.
The law of the playground. The terrifying system of unwritten traditions, games, taunts, and insults that rule the happiest days of every schoolchild in Britain. Joeys, gaylords, fannies, knobs, you get the idea.
Boyle.
Here.
Darby.
Here, sir.
Kay.
Here, sir.
Godliman.
Sir.
McGuinness.
Yes, sir.
Mitchell.
Sir.
Casey.
Here, sir.
Reeves.
Here.
Rouse.
Sir.
Stevenson.
Sir.
Lee.
Yes, sir.
Zane.
Here.
Have you ever touched a BMW?
Yeah?
What? You've touched a black man's willy? Ugh, gay.
When in the first year, your blazer's enormous, isn't it? First year, second year, third year, you're beginning to see a hand. The beginnings of a hand. Fourth year, and by the time you're in the fifth year, your blazer, you're not trying to look like you're in the Breakfast Club. That's actually where the sleeves end up.
I'm sure you are all eager to know what your homework is for tonight.
School bus.
I imagine all school bus journeys are the same, which is whereby you create a moving prison, almost, which people can't get off, but more people get in, and it's literally a lawless state for kids.
The seating from the front to the back is directly proportionate to your status. So you'd move back, you'd move back, you'd move back. By the time you got to sixth form, you were where I am now. This is the throne. Or is it? Because there's one step up from this, and that's this position. I don't think you can catch this, but it's up here. You normally have a bit more headroom, but it was here. And if you were here, at the age of 16, 17, this is the closest you get to God.
The coolest bus went to the council estate. You know, you'd have to be rocked to be on the back of that. And I think there was one occasion, it was mentioned in assembly that somebody had thrown a golf ball out of the window and it had hit a pensioner.
The best things were when you'd hold someone on the bus past their stop. So they'd be going home, it'd be the journey home, and their stop would come up and you just grab them and they just hold them. Or you'd tie their tie so tight to one of the metal bars that basically, like, they either had to miss their stop and attempt to undo their tie, or leave their tie and go without a tie until they got a new tie ordered in, because they'd had to leave it on the bus because you tied it so tight.
Gareth, another school bully, would do this thing where if you were sitting by the window, he'd push you up against the window, so your arm was stuck up against the window like that, and he'd get his hand and he'd just do that. He'd put his finger up against the window. So all the way home, it would look like it was you doing that. And you'd be going, all right, yeah, right, sorry.
And there was this one kid upstairs who once stuck, it was the longest, funniest joke I think I ever remember, at least from the bus journey, where he stuck his head out of the window at one point, and one of the kids at the back upstairs, hardest kids on the bus, just shut the window on his head and held it there for 45 minutes.
Friendly bus drivers for school children simply didn't exist. If you opened them up, their heart would be black, and it might smoke as well. They were just despicable individuals. Hated children. They were children haters.
Not only did these bus drivers, they're always exhausted and driving quite carelessly, but smoking, looking for their cigarettes while driving along a dual carriageway. And our bus driver was into his music and very nearly killed all of us while looking for his Status Quo cassette.
Morris, see me at the end of class.
Targets.
Kids got bullied for many different reasons. For being poor, for being ginger, obviously, for being fat, for being gay, for having divorced parents, for having a dead parent.
Smelling, being a Jehovah's Witness, having your mum walk you to the school gates.
Any kid that required any devices or medical aids in their school day were always going to suffer. Any kid that had a built-up heel on their shoe.
There were the people who used briefcases rather than school bags.
I was the only kid out of 2,000 pupils to carry a briefcase. I'd love to say my mum told me to carry it, but she didn't. She said, don't carry a briefcase, you'll look like a twat. But I was like, no, I want to be academic, I'll carry a briefcase.
There was one kid, I can't remember his name, but he had it all going on. He had all the basics. He had the glasses, he was small, he was good at maths, he enjoyed computers, he liked Dungeons and Dragons, and he absolutely stunk, and he had a homemade jumper that his mum had made, a knitted jumper. It was all going on in one. He was so easy to bully, he was like an Uber victim, that he almost went the full scale and became the god. Because you've got that much badness going on, it almost negates itself and becomes a positive. There was too much going on. The bullies got confused because they didn't know why they were beating him up. They'd be like beating him up, going, you smelly little computer. Oh, God, let's leave him. I can pick on him.
It's your time you're wasting, not mine.
Dyslexia.
I don't think dyslexia was considered as something that was real or, like, you know, you don't laugh at dyslexics as much as, you know, it is now. You're not supposed to, you know. I remember pencil cases that were actually sold with fake graffiti on, and half that graffiti was anti-dyslexic humour. Dyslexics rule KO, and dyslexics of the world untie. And you could buy this.
Of course no one could read as kids. This idea that kids can't read, they've got dyslexia. No one can read, that's why we're at school. We're learning how to read.
Dyslexia hadn't really been officially invented, like paedophiles hadn't been officially invented. It wasn't part of the vocabulary. Like, suddenly when dyslexia sort of became this thing, and it was sort of validated and, you know, proved, 50% of the population turn around and go, oh, I've got that.
If you get an essay back and it would say, see me, you knew you were in trouble, and then the teacher would give you like a barrage of advice. Your spelling's not very good, your grammar's terrible, and you could just say, well, I might be slightly dyslexic. Always slightly.
There was this experiment going on with special lenses in your glasses. So there was this poor kid that spent one day, and it was only one day, at the front, wearing glasses that had one green filter and one red filter on them. This kid that was like early Elton John, sitting in our class doing reading with special glasses, multicoloured lenses. And the abuse that kid got was just much worse than any dyslexia.
Are you eating, Wheeler?
Home economics.
It sounds very technical, that. Economics of the home, which consisted of making fairy cakes for a full term.
We made a lot of scones. I made a lot of scones. I'm quite good at scones. Cheese scones, plain scones, raisin scones. One week, bit left field, we made a stir fry. Just made a little stir fry and chucked some raisins into it, and then it went back to scones.
Melt the chocolate, put the Rice Krispies in, be a bit adventurous, put cornflakes in instead, put a spoonful in a paper cup, leave to set, walk away.
Well, basically, home economics was cheese straws, pizza, bread, fairy cakes, Basically, what kind of diet? I mean, do they think that's enough?
One time they made us make this thing that was called a curried apple, which we were hoping would involve curry, and that we could fucking throw the apple away. But it was in fact an apple filled with sort of sugar and spice. My mate threw it out of a second floor window, hit a first year on the jaw and knocked him unconscious.
Settle down, settle down.
Bullies.
Our school, they had an attitude towards bullying that was pretty much like the army's attitude, I would say, which was they recognised that it went on and they were wholeheartedly behind it.
I was thrown in the prickly bush, but I would imagine a lot of people were. And then I did enter into a slight area of bullying, I think in the third year, and there was a first year, we got a willow tree and bent it down and tied him on it by his hands and legs and let him hover for a while.
Me and my mate would have a game where you'd walk along and you'd try and clip little kids with your bag, and he seemed to have a particularly deft action, like he would barely move it, but he'd really kind of knock them over. And then when we left, he showed me that all along in the side of his bag he'd been keeping a huge spanner.
There was a girl who had a marble eye, which, not a marble eye, a glass eye. A girl who had a glass eye. That would have been cool if it was a marble. She could have changed it different colours. We would hit her on the back of the head and on the back to see if it fell out. We wanted that rolling along the floor. That never happened, but no matter how many times it never came out.
There was a boy that was just always imprisoned. He was just perpetually incarcerated. He got tied up in the football nets. They wrapped him up in the goalposts, in the nets, and played football. And he had a lot of closure about it after a while. He would relax. He would just lie there in the nets and just take it. And all he would say, his big catchphrase was, "Let me out, let me out." There was always something he was in that he needed to get out of.
There was one kid, it was a bit dim in the class, and quite often they'd be pushed into one of the boxes, they'd like the cupboards that keep all the tools, and they'd shut the door and get mallets and go boom, boom, boom on the side of it. They'd come out like that.
Would you feel a dick if you walked into a gay bar?
No.
So you'd feel right at home? Bender. Swimming.
Swimming at school was just another opportunity to feel inadequate.
Breaststroke, backstroke, butterfly and crawl, dog paddle, belly flop, you can do them all. Learn to swim.
There was nothing quite as demeaning as holding onto the side, learning how to do the kicks for breaststroke in the paddling end of the pool. Not the whole breaststroke. Oh, no, you don't need your arms right now. We don't trust you to let go of the side. Just do the kicks.
I always remember just seeing big men with talcum powder putting talc over their like wet balls, and you'd be like, "What are you doing?" It was so weird. Just they're really getting a towel down there with their balls out, like old men. You think, when I'm 60, I'm not gonna. Why are they doing that? I'm not gonna do that when I'm 60. And why are you doing that in front of these kind of quite innocent young children? Right, you get your balls out and rubbing them with the talc.
The girls didn't go swimming because they had a period every Tuesday at 2:40.
And getting bricks off the bottom, that was what kind of idiot would rescue a brick? Unless it was a really, really down his luck builder. He'd run out of materials. I need one more brick for the Sistine Chapel. Fuck it, I'm getting that one. I'm putting pyjamas on first, so I'm not an idiot.
Yeah, I was pretty good at swimming, so I used to enjoy it. And I could swim like nearly a length and halfway back underwater. So that was my skill. That's what I used to impress girls with. So I'd say, "Here, watch this," and I'd dive in and go all the way down to the other end and then back, but they'd be gone by the time I resurfaced.
Somebody said, what's going to happen is when the final whistle blows for the end of the whole thing, we're all going to scream and throw ourselves in the pool. Pass it on. We're really going to do this. Pass it on. And so it got passed on around the whole school every weekend. Now, this is really going to happen. As soon as the final whistle goes, scream, throw ourselves in the pool. Then, when the final whistle blew, one girl screamed and threw herself in the pool while everyone else stayed completely still.
Fight, 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 fight.
Fighting.
It was entertainment. It was like real life, better than a movie, better than like TV. It was a fight, and people would gather round, and like the chant would start: fight, 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 fight.
When you just ask one kid for a fight, you just assume him and his mate's going to be there. Got to the back of the gym, 200-300 people there. You didn't need Don King in my school, man. These fights just promoted themselves.
So you'd run down and, like, see what were going on, and the fight would be two lads, both in headlocks, for 20 minutes. Let go. You let go. Let go. I'll let go and you let go. Let go, let go. That were a fight.
Girl fights were far more serious than boy fights. Girl fights were horrific. You'd like borrow rings, people would be putting on other people's rings, their sovereign rings, all kinds of rings. You looked like Mr. T by the time you were ready to go.
I remember one girl like pulling someone's hair and just knee her in her face, and someone taking a stiletto off her and smashing it in someone's face.
Scratching, pinching, twisting. One fight that happened, a girl bit another girl's cheek and drew blood.
I tried a fight once, but it didn't take. I think I just tried to sort of push him or sort of grabbed his arms and, you know, I don't know, I think I had a vague idea of kind of folding him up and sticking him in a corner and not letting him out until he did what I said. It didn't get anywhere near that point.
You know, I had the old red mist and ran up to him and hit him as hard as I could on the jaw, and then it was like one of those comedies. He just stood there, no response, and he turned round and I just thought I was going to die, and he said, I've just had a déja vu. And then he drops. It's a fantastic moment. I've just had a déja vu.
Good morning, you may all sit down.
Assembly.
If a kid had been knocked over and was in hospital, there'd be an assembly. It usually involved a near-death experience or urinating in the bushes near Mrs. Wiggins at 40A or something. It was a way of just telling people something bad has happened. That's why we've gathered you all together.
A teacher died in our school, a drama teacher, and we all were called in and we all had an assembly and we were sitting there, and this drama teacher died. She'd been found dead the day before. It's terrible news, and the headmaster came out and said, we've got some terrible news. Our drama teacher thingy has sadly died, and his kid shouted out, Tristan his name was, he shouted out, are you sure she's not acting, sir? And it was the best thing I'd ever heard, and no one could quite believe it, and I think even the teachers found it quite funny, but they couldn't say anything.
Our headmaster called an emergency assembly just for the boys, and our headmaster was just apoplectic with rage. He was just beside himself with rage. But the thing is, no one knew what he was talking about, because he kept using all these big long words and medical terms. So what he said was, there is a boy here. The culprit knows who they are. Who last night defecated on the toilet floor. And we were like, what the fuck does defecated mean? And some kid said, it's a type of coffee. What, someone sprayed coffee on the toilet floor? What the fuck was he so angry about that for?
We had a reverend who was like really thought he was hip, and would do things like he start his sermon by going, neighbours, everybody needs good neighbours, just a little understanding. We can find the perfect plan. Those are the lyrics to our popular television show, Neighbours. But in many ways, they say a lot about the world we live in.
And we had a teacher once, the art teacher, and she was just such a Bible basher. And there was an overhead projector, and there was all like these little blocks. And she went, "What's this?" I don't know. And then she put two pieces of paper there, and it spelt Jesus. And she said, "You've got to go looking for Jesus to find it." And I'm like, oh God.
The headmaster had an obsession with litter, and he became aware that the reason there were so many crisp packets in the school playground lying around was not because people weren't chucking them in bins, but because crisp packets were actually blowing out of the bins, because you put them in the bin, but the wind would come up and they'd waft away, and this was genuinely happening. And he became so incensed that we were obviously failing to scrunch up these crisp packets so they'd stay in the bins and wouldn't blow out, that he brought one into assembly to demonstrate for us. And he took the crisp packet, held it out in front of us, scrunched it up, put it on the desk, there. And then there was this sort of slow-burning laugh across the whole room as the crisp packet unscrunched in front of him. And he honestly, he didn't know what to do. He basically had to deny it was happening at all. It was like, it was like one of Stalin's generals. You didn't speak of it, but it was there, and by, 40 seconds later, it was a flat crisp packet in front of him. I think a few months later he tried to ban crisps.
Do you enjoy being the class clown?
Ethiopians.
Unfortunately, nothing at school was beyond ridicule. And when Live Aid happened and everyone was at school, you look back on it now, it rips your heart open. Back then, you were wondering why fat kids were getting food.
I did much, not much, to help the Ethiopian children. I did the 24-hour fast. You could only drink fluids. Well, fluids to me is soup, that's a fluid. Chicken you can have, because chicken doesn't really count. Or anything that flies, I'd say, doesn't really count. And sometimes crisps, but only if they're ready salty, because the flavouring is actually what makes it count.
All I remember about Ethiopia was just a series of jokes that were, like, not funny, but because, like, we thought they were really offensive, they were considered, like, really? What's the fastest thing on earth? An Ethiopian with a dinner ticket. Factually wrong, because I don't think they operate dinner tickets in Ethiopia. I don't think that's a way that you get meals out there. And B, he's starving. He's still not going to be that fast. A cheetah's still going to be faster, because that is the fastest thing on earth. But, you know, at the time it wasn't like, let's race. We didn't have an Ethiopian, we didn't have a cheetah. We couldn't have orchestrated that race.
We used to have a metalwork teacher who was one of them sort of more in touch with the kids type of teacher. And he wrote this song and went on local sort of TV, regional news, and sung it on there, and then they pressed the records, and it came out, I think it got to about number 70-something in charts or something like that.
Boys would, Ethiopian boys would push out their bellies really big and go, "Oh, I'm an Ethiopian," and just, like, make their stomachs really big, which was very sensitive.
Oh, Lord, my belly's full, and I can eat whatever I like. I can't imagine how your daughter feels tonight. I wish I could have saved her life. Magic.
Put it away or have it confiscated.
Masturbation.
Sometimes I feel sexually excited. When this happens, my penis goes hard, and I get nice feelings when I touch it.
There was a story about a boy, he was Spanish, and there was a story about the fact that he had apparently wanked in the library. And at the time, I remember just not believing it at all. Like, that would never happen. That's like aliens coming down and landing. But looking back, obviously, he probably just did wank in the library. Probably most boys wanked in the library. I was probably the only one too square to go into the library and do what I wanted to do and wank over that photography book with the picture of a girl in a bikini.
First, I go somewhere private to do this, where no one will see me. I'll go to my bedroom.
Boys masturbate, but in the land of school, girls don't masturbate. They might accidentally brush their hand across their genitals, but that would be accidental in all ways. That wouldn't be sort of intentional. If you played truth, and there would be the dilemma of the girl of, it would be asked, do you masturbate? Like, do I tell the truth? That's the kind of point of the game.
How to wank was something that went around for a while, because it wasn't immediately obvious how you would do that. And I had a very naive friend who had heard that any sort of friction would do the job. He said, yeah, it's true. Your penis is so sensitive that you could just put it on a radiator and you'll come. That was a theory at the time, which I'm pleased to say I did not try.
2 words, Dempsey and Makepeace. Every Friday night, 9 o'clock, suddenly parents would go, "Oh, you love this show, why don't you watch it with us?" I'm getting tired, I think I'll go to bed now and let's go to sleep, got some homework to do, stuff like that.
Well, you certainly know how to show a girl a good time.
And Janet Ellis. When she broke her hip that time, that parachute jump.
When I first discovered masturbation, I thought, this is it. I mean, that is me for the next 3 years. Wave goodbye to Mum and Dad. And it pretty much turned out to be a conservative estimate.
The worst feeling about homework was Sunday night, because you'd be sitting there watching telly on a Sunday evening, knowing that you've got some massive essay to write about Henry VIII, and you just don't want to do it. And the Antiques Roadshow is on, and you're glued to that. then it's songs of praise, then it's Last of the Summer Wine, which, when you've got an essay to do, is piss funny.
Paddy McGuinness will be warming up for a laugh in Funny Cuts over in E4 at 10:15. Transmission with T-Mobile hits the streets of Belfast tonight. Join Steve Jones and Lauren Laverne at 11:40. Next though, Big Brother's having a laugh.
The law of the playground. The terrifying system of unwritten traditions, games, taunts, and insults that rule the happiest days of every schoolchild in Britain. Joeys, gaylords, fannies, knobs, you get the idea.
Mac.
Sir.
McGuinness.
Yes, sir.
Casey.
Here, sir.
Collins.
Sir.
Godliman.
Sir.
Horn.
Yep.
Kay.
Here, sir.
Lee.
Yes, sir.
Darby.
Here, sir.
Boyle.
Here.
Middlemiss.
Here.
Reeves.
Here.
What's the worst thing you can buy from a second-hand shop? What? Second-hand bog paper? Do you get it?
Yeah.
You get second-hand bog paper?
School was great. I met people I don't keep in touch with. I was taught stuff that was of no practical use to me. I learned life lessons which I have now forgotten. Pretty much it set me up perfectly for real life.
Would your parents be impressed if they knew how you behaved?
Break time.
I've got my book. Can I show you my book? This would be games that we would play at break time. Privet.
We used to reenact scenes from films at break, especially Annie. For some reason, I always wanted to be Molly, the really squeaky kid in Annie. And we'd have, I think Charlotte was Annie, because she had red hair. And we all had our separate, and we used to act out the same scene.
Off-ground tig we used to play. That was a good one. Where if your feet were on the ground, no one could tig you. But it got a bit silly where you'd like be stood on a straw, you know, or a bottle top. I'm off the ground.
We tended to play a lot of skipping games, hopscotch. There was a French skipping with the elastic that we'd tie around two people's ankles and then jump in between. I think it was England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, inside, outside, donkey's tails.
One person is on and thinks of 3 records, but they have to sing part of it, e.g., if you're gonna do it, right, do it with me. And if the person says one word from either of the song, this is where it becomes a bit, what? From either of the song, the person who had it steps forward and has to chase the person to a certain place. If they catch them, they're on. If they don't, the person does it again. When the person on gives the song to the others, don't tell them which. It's just rubbish.
We used to do that game with a piece of paper. I don't know what it's called, but we'd always write an insult in there. So everything would be really nice, like, oh, you know, the guy you fancy loves you, you will have 4 kids, you look beautiful today, really nice things, and then one would just be, you smell of bum.
But particularly stupid was the idea of hide and seek in a sealed, fenced-off playground. We got into this thing where somehow we felt we couldn't be seen if we crouched in the corner of the playground and did this. And all that would happen is that the person that was seeking would just look around and go, oh look, there's that person crouching in the corner with their hands on their face.
But what it's got at the back is a list of games that we already know, which are boring. If you could see that, boring. And these are ones that we're bored of. Hide and seek, follow my leader, tennis, polo, mother may I, wrestling, Madonna game. Madonna spelled M-A-D-D-O-N-E-R.
The bell's for me, not for you.
Guest speakers.
We had the Green Cross Code Man. He came in, and it was dead exciting because he played Darth Vader, didn't he? So that was brilliant. So we were like amazed.
When you get to the curb, always stop, stop, stop.
We had a policeman come in who taught us about don't go off with strangers. And then for the finale, he got an Alsatian out the back of his van and he ran across with a plaster cast on and the dog wrestled him to the floor. So that was the pièce de la résistance.
We had Welephant. Welephant was a guest speaker. an elephant who was the mascot of the fire brigade. His big message was the fire brigade are great, I'm sure they are, and if you ever go like that to a fireman, then and he's going past in a fire engine, he'll do it back. What he didn't say was it has a shelf life. You know, if you do that age 7, chances are a fireman will go, brilliant, good to see you as well, kid. If you do that age 21, they're most likely to think you're taking the fucking piss.
There was one time, oh, bless, there's a dance company that had come in. And this guy, oh, he was doing a dance and he had nothing but cycle shorts on. And he got an erection. And he was literally going, you know, like punching himself because he had a massive hard-on. And everyone was just going, oh no, all the teachers. All the teachers were just laughing their heads off. And he did it. He did the dance with a big stonking hard-on.
We had a man with a fox who came and gave it. Can you imagine that? He brought his fox, and it was brilliant. We all had to queue up to touch the fox. And it was really frightened, but I think he'd broken its legs. And it certainly didn't walk in. I think he carried it in, and that was that.
Would you prefer lines or detention?
Smoking. About half my class smoked and half didn't, and the ones who didn't were very pious about the smoking. I just went, that's really stupid because, you know, it's really bad for you. And you go, yeah, but so? And that was the heated debate that we'd often have at break times about, you know, the boons and the minuses of smoking.
If you sort of sucked an excessive quantity of polos, it was pretty much a dead cert that you were on 20 a day.
Twosies we had at our school, whereby if someone didn't have a cigarette and you had a cigarette, they go, oh, can I get 2s on that cigarette? Can I go 2s with you? And that meant halfway down, you'd hand it over to them. Then, if that wasn't enough, there was tab as well as the label on the cigarette. Someone had got 2s already and you didn't have a cigarette, you go, can I get tab? So then you get the label. And then after tab, when the label had burnt away, there was like a millimetre left, you could go, can I get filter? But I only ever saw one kid ask for filter, and he was the same kid who ate mud if you told him to.
We used to buy singles. Do you ever do that? You know, singles from the ice cream van, 5p. And nobody, even the teachers used to go and buy them. They would queue up with us, the teachers, to buy single. They didn't go, excuse me, I don't think you should be selling cigarettes to children for 5p. No one cared. It was like, single. And the teacher would go, hey, 2 singles. I was first.
It was always Benson and Hedges. Everyone smoked Benson and Hedges. Or maybe Silk Cut when you thought about cutting down when you were 14.
It was like you kind of gesticulate with your hand with the cigarette. It was like you'd make as much of it being on your hand as possible to be like, so anyway, and I said to him, so everything was bigger than it should have been when you were smoking at school.
Sometimes you'd do that, you know, and you'd let it hang down the front of that. That's quite a good way of smoking. And then towards the end, when it got short, you'd do that with it as well and finish it like that.
And then there was the great one when you were smoking at school and you were trying to hide it from the teachers, so you'd have it so you're doing that. So the cigarette would go up into your hand, and hopefully the smoke would then go up into your sleeve, so you sort of got away with it.
Spit that out!
Dinners.
The packed lunchroom, which was kind of off from the main dining hall, it was kind of like Bartertown in Mad Max 3 Beyond the Thunderdome, whereby food was currency.
In your lunchbox, you'd always have like a trio or a club biscuits, and sandwiches on a good day would be ham, on a bad day, crab paste.
Crisps were probably the top-rated currency because, you know, your mum could buy good crisps or bad crisps. Pity the kid who had Tesco's own brand crisps. It was like, you're not going to get anywhere with those. You're clearly new to Bartertown.
It said how rich your parents were about what was in that lunchbox. If you had Brown's or wholemeal bread, your parents had a bit of cash. If you had just white bread, and if you had jam or peanut butter sandwiches, you know, you're living on the borderline.
We're all sat round the lunch table in the hall, and everyone's going, who's got egg sandwiches? Who's got egg sandwiches? So I opened up my Spider-Man lunchbox. Of course, Muggins has got the egg sandwiches. I look down at them, there's a bloody great handprint. There's a massive great handprint in the top of my egg sandwich. And you know why? Because dads do it. When dads make your sandwiches, for some reason, they feel the need to go like that.
So what they did is they insisted that you had some of everything at lunch. You could have a small, a very small, or the largest portion you could have was an ordinary. I very seldom wanted an ordinary because the food was often disgusting, particularly if it was croquette potatoes. Their take on Italian cuisine, their macaroni cheese, was disgusting, as was their gooseberry pie. Well, their gooseberry pie may have been excellent. I've never been offered gooseberry pie elsewhere.
School pizza, square. I mean, pizza is round, that's what pizza is. But these dinner ladies, who were all collectively Irish, decided that square pizza was the way forward.
The second the plate drops, everyone goes, "Oh, hey!" And still to this day, I guarantee, if you are in a restaurant and a plate smashes, there is a pause of about 3 seconds where nobody says anything. It just freezes in time, because everybody's thinking the same thing. If anybody else does it, I'm joining in.
PE. England continually loses at all sports. Possibly that's because your first exposure to sports is putting beanbags into rubber circles of increasing distances away.
I really did like PE, in particular the trampoline. And I remember at the time the pop band Bros had a video out where they did a lot of trampolining. It's called Drop the Boy, the song was, as I recall. And I remember I actually had the Union Jack boxer shorts that they had on under my pleated gym slip, and I would strike their poses that they made in the video. It was the whole reason for getting on the trampoline.
If you didn't bring your kit, you had to do it in your knickers. I can definitely remember that, because on more than one occasion I had to run around in my vest and my pants like a nonce. The people pointing at me and throwing balls at me on many occasions, not the good kind either.
If you really tightly grip a rope, I'm getting it a little bit now, just reminiscing, you get kind of like a feeling in your groin, and when you're like 6, 7, 8, you don't know what this is, but you just know that staying at the top of a rope, holding on really tightly, is a nice feeling.
The picking team thing was always very degrading, obviously, because you knew straight away. You might as well just go around school with the numbers 1 to 50 on you and say 1's the best, 50's an idiot, because that's what every games thing was. It was just like, you, and you just saw this poor little kid there with his little red legs, who'd never seen any daylight, all fat and clever. Because they never got the glory. They never picked for maths, did they? They never said, right, let's pick the maths team. He never had his glorious moment of going, and now it is my moment. It was just PE. It was just embarrassingly humiliating.
The last person to get the pick, you usually, like, about 20 years after leaving school, are the ones you see on the news. And you go, yeah, I thought he'd do that. You know, village, all dead.
The one thing you always have to remember in rounders, otherwise you're out, is hit the ball, drop the bat. That was the one that got me every time, and I used to always be out because I wanted to take it with me, it's nice. Smack, leave, no, now you're out, how is that fair? Now I'll suck, and I'm going to actually call you stupid bitch behind your back.
I played rugby under duress, so I used to have to go and play these rugby matches on a Saturday, and until one of the kids grabbed my balls and swung me round in a full 360 degrees and let me go, still holding me balls, and that was the end of my sporting career.
Are you a light bulb or a candle?
A light bulb?
So you get turned on by a knob?
A candle?
So you get blown out by a puff?
Safety in numbers.
Assembly is, without doubt, the greatest event in any school ever. Religious studies, sexual education means nothing. You can have the most fun in assembly. You just hear, and the teacher was like, bastard, because they knew it was, and then from the other side of the hall, and you know, they can't stop it. It was power in numbers assembly. It's everyone together.
And the best fun to have at that was getting your watch and shining the sunlight into their eyes, especially if it was a guest speaker or something, like a local police or a fireman. That would really annoy them up. And then when digital watches had just come along, you and your mate sort of just syncing up the alarms to go off at about 30 seconds of each other. That was really effective.
When there was applause, round of applause, yeah, well done, well done. Gonna get the last clap in. Everyone's finished clapping, got the last clap in? Yeah, wicked skills.
Parquet flooring. Quality, proper parquet flooring. Brilliant for brewing a fart. You try brewing up a fart on a laminate. It won't work.
I remember Lanky, he belched, really like a proper full-on belch in assembly, proper full-on. And then everyone laughed, and then when the laughter died, he very loudly went, "Excuse me,
And he got out of it because it was, he got in a bit of trouble, but he went, I had to belch. I had no control over it. It just came out, and the teachers couldn't punish him for it.
No running in the corridor.
Graffiti.
This is verbatim. Brad eats fish and is a bison and a wanker.
My favourite graffiti was this piece that was beside our bus stop that said, Kerry Matheson is a slag. I spent years looking for her, and by the time I found her, she died from AIDS.
There's a bison at my school called Brad who's a wanker and he eats fish. You can't top that for a piece of graffiti. It makes no sense. It's brilliant.
My best friend recently found a pencil case that she'd had at school. And it's like got Jane Loves, and then there's like a boy's name scribbled out, another boy's name scribbled out, another boy's name scribbled out to somebody else. And then she's got Mel Loves NIP, no one in particular. Or SIP, someone in particular. That's when she actually fancied someone.
I used to always like the graffiti that was sort of on a history book, in kids' version of history, when Khrushchev met Kennedy. Kennedy had his cock and balls out, and Khrushchev was going, suck on it!
88, I remember being a big thing. In the year 1988, when you wrote the year, you would write it 8, T, letter T, 8. Can't ever do that again, before or since. That one special year where you could write, well, you could write 98 or 78. So it doesn't work.
There was a kid at school who'd written, again, legendary graffiti up in Hampstead Station, and he got his marker pen out and he'd written, fuck the station, on the sign. And it was there for years, and it was like, wow, yeah, what a brilliant thing to write. Fuck the station, yeah. Yeah, fuck the station.
Tipp-Ex was a great way to deface many a death. So what we do is we pour Tipp-Ex, we pour as much Tipp-Ex as we could. We get our compass out, back pocket, and we'd be like, right. And we'd start scratching away in the Tipp-Ex and actually writing quite boring things like Jason Donovan forever. You know, I love Mel and Kim. And in fact, I remember it took a lot of Tipp-Ex to do this. We did like a whole line of Tipp-Ex, and we just wrote Tay, 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 Tay. Tay, you ain't never gonna be respectable.
I'm not here for the good of my health.
Extracurricular.
Because of the desire to go to university from the age of 5, I made sure I did everything. I was in choir, violin, piano I would do after school, art club. I even formed a philosophy group, which was a philosophy discussion group, which was really boring. We didn't know anything.
I never understood the concept of, do you want to stay a bit longer in your own time? People used to do it, didn't they? People would say, you can stay behind and do an extra hour of computer class. And they'd do it. We'd be like, why? Why are you doing this?
I was a member of the chess club at school, and no matter how many cool things you try and do after that, take the mickey out of teachers, it always come back to the fact, aren't you the lad who's in the chess club? We're like, yeah, but you know, I pushed that teacher over, it doesn't matter, you're in the chess club, you're a spod. And so there's nothing really you could do after a while to get away from the stain of being a spod.
Young archaeologists, I did that a lot. Obviously, it's what young people want to do with their time, dig about with trowels and wash bones.
Sometimes the teachers would come along and join in a game as well for an extra bit of fun. And then once when they caught us playing chess with the teachers, I just remember going home with a lot of dead arms.
Our school, after school, was showing films to people for 20 pence to go towards the minibus fund. And we watched 3 films. The first film we watched was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The second one was a film called Shogun Assassin, which involved beheadings. And the third one was a film called Exterminator, where a man goes through a mincing machine. And all 3 of them were subsequently banned in the following years. And then it just disappeared and was never talked about again. We were absolutely terrified. We'd never seen a horror film in our lives. We were 13.
We got the option of you could either do sport or you could go out and dig old ladies' gardens up. And I went for the latter, and me and my friend got this brilliant old woman, and we'd go around to her house on a Thursday afternoon, and she'd say, right, first of all, go down and get some cakes. So we'd go down to the baker's, get some cakes. Then she'd pour us a whiskey, and then we'd gamble, and she'd take our money off us, and we'd watch like an old George Formby movie. till the headmaster found out, came round and said that you're going to have to go off and do some proper digging at someone else's house.
People that volunteered to be at school any longer than the school day were just weird. Weird, really swotty, or maybe came from a broken home. They didn't want to go home because mum and dad were drunk.
Put it away or have it confiscated.
Pornography.
In the bushes on the way home from school, there'd be sort of torn copies of porno mags, which is a gold find. It's 10 points immediately.
The first one I saw was the damp one in a bin, and I just remember being utterly horrified by it. I mean, the thought that women might look like that down there. I mean, it was sick-making. It really was.
People go, look at this, look, it's a breast, oh my God. You know, everyone was gobsmacked by a breast. But now, if it's not an old woman defecating into a plastic bag, no one wants to know, do they?
I never bothered with like the Men's World or the Mayfair, and it's just too glossy. Just far too glossy. But Parade, it was £1.20 and it was filth. I loved it.
I used to quite like the letters that you get in porn mags, like even as a kid, you know, that stuff. 'Cause it'd never sort of be enough that this guy had shagged some women in some really unlikely way. There was always like a couple of sentences at the end where he'd sort of go, and that was just the start. There's always a whole summer of pumping that secretary, wasn't there?
And I remember every Friday night, we would all look forward to the Red Triangle film. I would wait for my mum to fall asleep. My mum would maybe fall asleep at 11 o'clock. Come 11:30, come the witching hour. There's the Red Triangle. I'm going at it like a Burke.
Judy Blume's Forever was the best book ever, of course. Nobody bothered to read the whole thing, just the special pages, you knew where they were.
We'd all know that page 81, go to the library, it was really well thumbed, page 81, and there was this quite explicit scene where they would do it.
Wow, that was just like, that tipped us over the edge. We'd mark that page, we'd take our Forever book into school, and we'd read that page over and over again.
There was a video called Animal Farm, and everyone heard about this video.
And when you hear about that film, Animal Farm, because it sort of does the rounds, that film, and everyone, oh, Animal Farm, you know, so they're at it with horses and pigs and chickens and all that, and you're going, ooh. But when you actually see it, oh, it scars you.
And I still, to this day, get weak knees when I think of the Doberman bit, seeing its little... Oh. I don't think it was a real nun, but I know the dog was real.
I've actually brought one of my school reports in, which I find fascinating. This was my headmaster's summary. It actually says, sooner or later, Lee will realise that joking around in class will get him nowhere in life. And I brought another one of my reports in. Oh no, sorry, that's my BAFTA.
Stop your messing around.
Well, Alan Carr and JLC are getting lessons in Brainy from Carol Vorderman doing the Friday Night Project at 10:30. Next up, who's it gonna be? An ex-housemate is going back in Big Brother.
The law of the playground. The terrifying system of unwritten traditions, games, taunts and insults that rule the happiest days of every schoolchild in Britain. Joeys, gaylords, fannies, knobs, you get the idea.
Collins.
Sir.
Reeves.
Here.
Stevenson.
Sir.
Dolan.
Present.
Godliman.
Sir.
Darby.
Here, sir.
Lee.
Yes, sir.
Matt.
Sir.
McGuinness.
Yes, sir.
Montgomery.
Present.
Mitchell.
Sir.
Carr.
Sir.
What's the capital of Thailand? Bangkok. What? You want me to Bangkok? Ah!
There's always a condom, weren't there, in the playground, and of course that would be hysteria, kind of, but obviously not as hysterical as when there was a dog in the playground, because that would everyone would say sit down, but you'd just have to run to the window. Dog in the playground, and everyone would know the dog. And it was always like a mangy dog, when it wasn't like a poodle or like a chihuahua. It was like a black, wow, old dog running around. Like, that's my next door neighbour's dog. It's called Ben. It's called Sam. Ben, Sam.
Do me 50 lines.
Punishment.
There was a sort of hierarchy of punishments. You know, I remember lines that you had to do overnight with your homework in your book. There was also lines on the board at lunchtime.
We had, you know, formulas to make lines easier, and you'd start off by writing it across like that, and then you'd start like doing 3 words going down, 3 words going down, 3 words going down, and then 3 words, and 3 words, and 3 words. And then the scientific formula that evolved over the years was, if it started with I, as they all did, was you get a ruler, and you just do an eye like that. So you had the eyes done like in about 30 seconds straight away, so that was a lot of time saved. And then it was just a word at a time, a word at a time.
I. Will, down the page like that. And it would always, even with your best efforts, always come off the page. So by the bottom one, it was like there was no room for the teacher at all.
If you were messing around in the playground, you had to stand against the wall. And really, there was nothing keeping you at the wall. It wasn't some sort of magnetised playground wall whereby they just went, boom, and you're like, God, I've been bad, I'm stuck against the wall. For some reason, you went, oh, wow, I really have to stay against this wall. It was a mental thing.
But then there were the more imaginative punishments. You get a sheet of graph paper, you know, and you'd have to put a cross in not like the big squares, in every tiny little square of graph paper, he'd make you put a cross in there. And that was a little bit mental.
Another weird punishment I had once was to write an essay about what it'd be like to live in a ping pong ball. And another one where I had to, for an hour, throw dice and write down all the numbers. I don't know whether the teacher was a gambler or something. He was trying to work out, he had some sort of gaming school going on. But that was it for an hour, just doing that, which I thought was OK. I didn't find it that boring.
Pens down, your time is up.
Careers advice.
You are now 15 years old. You're beginning to be aware of many things. In particular, the prospects in life before you.
We had a thing at school called Jig Cal, which was basically a sheet where you had to tick inside boxes, and then the sheet was put into a computer, and the computer came back with your ideal jobs from the information you'd put in. So it was basically, you know, you're never going to succeed, and we want a computer to tell you that, because none of us as teachers really want to tell you you're going to be a mechanic forever, or, you know, if you know, I know you want to go to space, little Dan. I know you want to go be an astronaut, but you can't write, and therefore the likelihood is you're not going to go into space. I don't want to be the one to tell you that, so we're going to feed this information into a computer, and then it's going to tell you you're rubbish, so we as teachers don't have to.
Do you remember you had a talk from someone about the different kinds of jobs there are? He's the man to look for now.
I always thought, I really want to take advice about where I'm going to end up from a guy who works out of a porter cabin.
And about 60% of the kids in my school, including me, got the computer printout. We opened it. Oh, what's it going to be? Oh, you should be a prison warden. Yeah, I'd be good in prisons. I'd be the first one in the showers getting raped, wouldn't I?
He generally advised everyone that I knew to become a fireman, essentially, which I didn't think was particularly great advice in the wettest city in Europe. But then he did work out of a largely wooden structure.
When your daughter goes to work for the first time, the excitement she feels, with her own money to spend, and crowds of new friends.
Yeah, we did have a careers advisor who essentially obviously wasn't having a very successful career, otherwise why in hell would they be a careers advisor? And they had no idea about anything other than nursing and secretarial work. So if you went in there and said, I'm thinking about engineering or becoming an architect or anything like that, they'd be like, oh, right. Got a couple of leaflets. Leaflet on nursing, do you want that? Nursing.
Make sure your daughter sees her careers teacher at school and the local careers officer.
The only career advice I had was when the career officer came around and said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, what do you like doing at school? I said, I like swimming. He said, right, the Navy. Yeah, next.
Music.
My recollection is that we didn't have many instruments. So there was like one kid that could play the piano, so he obviously got to play the piano, and the rest of us were given a stick and a bit of wood. And they just go, right, this is the music, I want everyone to play along. And we'll just all go, just hit it like some sort of cavemen.
music lessons are a bit pointless at school. I could play the recorder through my nose. It was quite. We used to play tunes through our nose.
If you're a bit like special needs, you know, what can I play, miss? Give me the bongos. If you're a bit touched, you can't really handle a glockenspiel. Just give them bongos. Like that. Brilliant. Certainly if you're a bit Rain Man.
It always amazes me when I look at rock groups now, like people like Oasis and, you know, these sort of cool rock groups, you know, and the lead singer's dead cool. The only person who did music at our school was the lad who wore a brown anorak and got spat on a lot. Now, that wasn't very cool to be doing music in them days, and he didn't have a bag. He had a wicker basket. That's what his mum sent him to school with. I mean, he's going to get the shit end of the stick with that.
Shit.
The cleaners aren't here to clear up after you.
Art.
I never understood the idea of art at school. I mean, like, especially at primary level, what you're getting little kids to draw paintings and use glitter. That's pretty much what they'd be doing if you weren't in the room.
There.
Flicking became quite vogue in the 80s. Flicking paint. Fluorescent paint on black sugar paper.
Your teacher would get to you and you're like, what have you brought from home, Josie? And I'd be like, I've got an empty carton of Bongo and an empty packet of bacon Christmas. I think she'd know that all I'd done was just brought my leftovers from lunch. But still, I think I managed to make a sunset with that, which I think she was quite impressed with.
You'd get like a flora tub, or you'd get a margarine tub and put paint in with water, and then you'd get a straw and put the paper over that and blow loads of bubbles so you'd get a print on, and there'd always be one gimp who'd suck instead of blow and end up having to go a casualty.
So you'd have to resort to sort of sticking that glue stuff, that fishy glue made of fish bones, that you didn't know that at the time, obviously, and you just paint your hand. Start off with a finger. Then if you got quite good at that, you peel it off, because it would be like as if you've got leprosy or something, you could just peel it off. Then a whole hand, that'd be good. Then if you had quite a lot of time to kill, then maybe, you know, go up to your elbow.
One of my teachers, he was a really good art teacher, and he said, he used to let us bring our albums in and things like that, so I'd bring my Hawkwind album in, and we'd play that whilst we painted. But he must have been in his 20s, and he came one day, he said, do you know, I had this really weird night last night, and like I was lying in bed and all these cartoon characters were like coming in and they were moving around on the ceiling and like pointing at me and things like that. I said, but it was weird because I was like awake. We're going, wow, that's mad, what happened there? And then looking back years later, you realise.
If you haven't got any work to do, I will find you some.
National events.
Reg, Matthew King, one of my mates, works at Summerfield, he came running up to me and went, Just, have you heard there's been this fire at this nuclear power plant in Russia and a big radioactive cloud is blowing our way? And then he ran off to go and tell Buddy Martin Ausslander and left me with that bombshell. A big radioactive cloud is coming our way to kill us all. That's what Reg told me on my way home. That put the fear of God into me.
The big one was Charles and Diana's wedding. So I got dragged in for 3 hours making sandwiches for this thing. You know, and if we'd have known what was going to happen, would we have bothered? God almighty, we soon learnt our lesson for a second marriage, didn't we? Yeah, well done. Cheers, that's all you're getting. We're not having a day off. We had an eggs and spoon race.
Comic relief used to be good. you know, when I was at school, it was actually funny. It was still funny in them days. I do think if they ever get a, you know, sort of with famine and what have you, if that all gets, you know, sorted out and Lenny Henry's on his arse, he's not going to be able to do much else.
I always hated comic relief. People sitting in a bath full of beans for starving Africans. Send them the fucking beans.
And I don't know if you remember when I said they brought up, it was being hailed as being better than the Titanic. Mary Tudor Rose. And we were excited. You know, some teachers said they're probably going to find bodies and dead people. And we were like, cool, brilliant. Everyone sat there having your packed lunch. And then when it got brought up, it was just a bit of wood. And most of the kids had fallen asleep and were like attacking each other. It was the most dullest thing ever. That, and when one of the space shuttles took off and everyone was just hoping it was going to blow up.
Let's have a game to see who has the softest punch. You go first. Ah! You win.
Violence.
The more creative forms of pain were, in my school, there was the Milli Vanilli, whereupon you'd go to someone and go, I need you, sha-na-na-na-na, you're what I want. I sort of definitely get the emphasis on the need you, that was quite important.
Favourite one would always be a bundle. Some would fall to the ground, also known commonly as the pile-on, and immediately 10, 12 lads would just leap on him, one on top of the other, leaving some poor little fella, probably with his bag or sachet on his back, squeezing into his lung and liver. That would always be fun.
Smell my cheese is you put your hands like this and you say to someone, smell my cheese, and they bend down to smell your cheese, and you punch them. And people would fall for it. I've smelled a lot of cheese in my childhood, I really did.
Posting was a big thing, where that involved 4 boys getting another boy and pulling him legs first against a post, crushing his genitalia.
One of you would get someone's leg, the other side would get the other person's leg, and then ram them, thus giving them the ball bollocker.
People used to ask you, have your shoes been christened? And then stamp on your feet. But that joke kind of falls down because there's no legitimate way that your shoes could be christened. It was just, in fact, a way of saying, I'm about to stamp hard on your feet and new shoes.
I do remember there was a boy at my school who was terribly bullied. I didn't join in at the front of the bull. I was sort of third rank behind going, yeah, he is an idiot, but could have been me. But I do remember he was once rolled up in one of those weird mat carpet things that are in lots of schools and then put on the top of some lockers, which I thought was very good as a piece of violence because obviously he hasn't actually been hurt. But if he moves, he'll fall off the top of some lockers and he's in a carpet and there's nothing he can do to free himself or put his arms out to stop, so he could be really badly hurt, but he's kind of done it to himself. It's the sort of thing that school children think will be a defence in front of the magistrates. And then presumably the carpet will unroll and he'll arrive like a, you know, mangled, unlovely Cleopatra.
The circle game.
To this day, I cannot work out how this game came about. I don't know who thought it up, I don't know how it was thought up, but the circle game was you'd get that shape with your hand, and then you'd put it below your waist, and you'd say hello to somebody, hello Dave, and if they looked at the circle, then you could punch them. But you couldn't go, hello Dave, because that's rubbish. You have to wait for them to say, all right mate, how you doing? Just wait for them to look at it, and then punch them. Now, if you're Dave, right, and I've just said hello to you, and I've just gone, hello Dave, and you know that I'm doing a circle, if, as quickly as you can, you get your finger like that through the circle, you then have the right to punch them. Take it to work the next day. They'll love it. They'll be so happy by the water cooler. Especially the guy who was obviously bullied at school. Bring it back up again. Refresh their memories. Right? Stand next to them, do that. The minute they look at it, you smack them in the face. It's not like you can go like that, because in doing that, you've looked at the thing, so you've got to accept the punch. That's the other thing about it. All this nonsense, just punch someone. If you want to punch someone, don't just punch them.
Take one and pass the rest along.
Collecting.
Everybody must collect something. That seemed to be the rule. And a sensible thing to collect is, say, badges, stickers, bookmarks, little flags on sticks, and anything that you can definitely get around the till at Warwick Castle.
You could get a rubber that looked like a custard cream, smelt like a custard cream, and some idiot thought it tasted like a custard cream and ate it and choked, and they got banned.
A hamburger rubber where you could take the cheese out and the gherkin, and you could dismantle it, and it smelt. It didn't smell of burgers, it smelled of flowers, of course.
I had one that smelt of cola, that was in a cola-style had a little cola can-style sheath to it, and it was long, and that was really good because you could almost get that up your nostril, like a kind of inhaler.
And the thing about these rubber collections is you never use them for actual, like, if anyone used your rubber for, like, rubbing out, it'd be like, no, it's not for that. It's a collection. It's a sacred thing.
And I've still got these at my mum's house, a big bag full of marbles. You got your rubbish glass ones, then you got your chinas and your steelies, which were brilliant.
There was a lot of kids whose dads worked at the foundry, so they'd get bolly bearings or bolly benders, and they'd be like great big balls that size of steel. So if you'd see some kid who'd be walking lopsided down there, you knew when he's coming towards your game of alleys that he's got a huge bolly bender in his pocket, and get out and roll it and then crush them all and then run off laughing.
And stinky stickers, you'd have an album and you'd scratch the sticker and it would smell of Coca-Cola or strawberries or bananas and things like that. But after a while, it all smelt like a generic mess.
The best ever trick that I learnt at school was taking a packet of Golden Wonder cheese and onion crisps, eating the contents, and then putting that packet into a warm oven for 1.5 minutes. You take it out, it's tiny, it's a miniature one. And then what you do is you get a safety pin through that, and that's the best badge of all time.
I was badges. I still at home have lots of badges. I didn't like badges. I derived no pleasure from these badges. I never wore them. I think I had a vague sense that one day I might wear them all at once. And maybe I still will. One day, if I decide to kill myself, maybe I'll put all my badges on one jumper and throw myself off a building.
If O'Reilly jumped off a cliff, would you follow him?
Rival schools.
What would happen is, around lunchtime, suddenly word would begin to spread that there was a fight. The lads from Wetherby were coming down and there was going to be a fight. And everyone was like, oh, after school. And it was the only time where you were grateful for the nutters.
Yeah, the boys' school in Northampton, every so often there was a rumour that they were all coming down after school to kick our heads in, and then we'd all say, what are you going to do? Well, and then we all had like this army type thing. Well, you run round the back, Alan, you be lookout like this, in the science lot with some binoculars. They're coming!
So it would be prepared. Tuesday, it's all going to go off. We're going to have a big ruck with Wolford. Wear your rings, yeah? And it would all be prepared, maybe in the graveyard. That was quite a good place. It was around thriller time, so anything that could take place in a graveyard was usually good value.
There were about 6 of us, there were. We didn't think there'd be many. We went down to this field and we were sort of waiting down the park, like we had a bat and, a stick. Going, come on, we're ready, you're ready. And, right, come on, we'll get them. And then suddenly, honestly, it was like Zulu. This is so true. There were just hundreds, literally like the whole year. We thought, what are we going to do? There's 6 of us, and and actually, I think one of us said, to the trees, and we hid in the tree.
What had happened sometimes is you'd send your third cock out first, you know what I mean? And he might sometimes beat the first cock of the other school, which makes your cock the hardest cock on the planet, if the third cock can beat the first cock of the other school.
Never happened, though. They'd all gather, all the lads would gather, it'd be like, yeah, swinging their cocks about, going, yeah, and then just no one would turn up. But it was always exciting, the afternoon where it was going to happen, even though it never did.
Right, chairs on table, and leave the room single file.
End of term!
Basically, the last week of term, leading into maybe a summer holiday or a Christmas holiday, it would always be fun week, so the work would pretty much go out the window.
Yeah, you could bring games on the last day. Twister was always the big one to try and play with the girls. And then, again, one of the teachers would like to come play Twister with the girls as well, and the lads would just be standing around like that. Sir, can we have a go in a minute, sir? Hang on a minute, hang on. And he would just play with the girls, Twister. And it would always end up with him collapsing the girls and him always losing. Odd, that.
I first saw The Breakfast Club, one of my favourite films in Mr. Lynett's geography class. What he did, he knew the film ass backwards, so every time he knew someone was about to swear, turn the volume down. I swear it's what he did.
All you did was you just wrote on people's shirts that Simon was gay and Stephen is a knob end.
And then you read them back years later and you realise that your friends were incredibly emotionally sort of bereft and inarticulate and couldn't actually sort of have a good life. I wish you well. They were like, yeah, fuck off, slag. That kind of, it's like, oh right, we were best mates.
And there was one time that we, there was one time that we'd gone, I think it was at the end of term, and we'd gone up to the top fields near where there were like 3 blocks at my school. There was Oxford Block, Centre Block and Tower Block. And it was just at the top of Tower Block. And we went up to the fields and drank loads of vodka. And then we came back, and it was before the end of school, and we decided it would be a really good idea to wee down the steps of Tower Block. So we did that.
I must have been in the 3rd year, and the 5th years were all leaving completely. On the final day, decided to have a riot, and they raided the woodwork rooms and got axes and saws out and chopped down the telegraph poles, and then smashed in the front doors. All the bike sheds went down, then got set on fire, and the poor headmaster, he was like running around with gob on him and stuff like that, going, "No, stop, please, stop." So whilst he was out in the playground, they all went into his office and demolished that.
And you always said, when I leave, right, Mr. Smith, I'm gonna shit in his car. I'm gonna shit in his car. And then the end of the term would come, you'd see Mr. Smith, and you'd see these people. Hey, all right, sir. Hey, yeah, cheers, goodbye. Never did it. Who ever did the daring thing at the end of the year? Liars, all liars.
I remember there were boys who left the school and came back and did a rebellious thing in my final year, and their rebellious thing was to put a small bomb in the organ loft of the school chapel, and which made a very loud bang, didn't set fire to anything, but deafened the organist lady for 2 days.
Robert Carlyle is training his mates to get their kit off. Good old British comedy. The Full Monty on Sunday at 9 o'clock. Next up tonight, dirty, fad, evil. Get the best of the worst.